trust the universe to give you what you need. When you realize that you are inseparable from the universe, you stop struggling and start flowing. Alan Watts. Welcome back to Spiritual Wisdom. Today's message, trust the universe to give you what you need, is an invitation for you to loosen your grip, release the fear of control, and allow life to unfold with more ease and clarity. As you listen, I encourage you to reflect on your own journey where you have been resisting the natural flow. And how might your life change if you trusted a little more, surrendered a little deeper, and listened to the gentle guidance life is already offering you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe the universe gives you what you need at the right time? Your insight may be the light someone else needs today. 1. True power comes from letting go, not control. Alan Watts teaches that true power arises not from trying to control life, but from learning how to let go. And when you look closely at your own journey, you realize how deeply this truth resonates, especially as you move further along the path of spirituality and spiritual awakening. He explains that the more you cling, the more rigid you become, and the more life resists you, because control is rooted in fear. Fear of losing, fear of uncertainty, fear of not being enough. And this fear blinds you to the natural flow that is already carrying you toward what you need. Watts often uses the Tao as a metaphor for this effortless strength, describing how the Tao nourishes all things without claiming authority, does everything without insisting on being noticed, and influences the world simply by existing in harmony with it. In the same way, your greatest power emerges when you stop demanding certainty and instead cooperate with the deeper rhythm of existence. When you live like a clenched fist, trying to force outcomes, people, and timelines into the shape you want, you trap yourself in tension and exhaustion. But when you open your hand even slightly, you begin to receive guidance, clarity, and opportunities that your tight grip once pushed away. Letting go does not mean giving up or abandoning your responsibilities. It means acting with intention while releasing the illusion that you can control everything. Think of a surfer who does not command the ocean, but learns to read its movements, respect its power, and ride its waves with grace. That is how Alan Watts invites you to move through life, with skill, awareness, and trust, rather than fear and domination. The more you try to control someone you love, the more they pull away. The more you obsess over a plan, the more anxiety you create. The more you cling to a relationship, a job, or an identity, the more fragile you become. But when you allow life to unfold, when you trust that some doors close for a reason, that detours contain lessons, that timing is wiser than your impatience, you begin to feel supported instead of threatened by the unknown. Alan Watts wants you to see that surrender is not weakness, but alignment with a universe that has always known how to move without your interference. When you surrender the need to know every outcome, you create space for intuition, timing, and synchronicity to guide you. You begin to notice that what you need often arrives the moment you stop forcing it, the moment you finally breathe and relax into the truth that the universe does not require your control to function. This shift in perspective is one of the most important steps in spiritual awakening, because it transforms fear into faith and tension into inner freedom. Over time, you start influencing others not through pressure or authority, but through your calm presence, your balanced energy, and your ability to trust deeply, even when things are uncertain. This is the quiet strength of the Tao: effortless influence, gentle power, and unwavering trust in the natural order of things. When you live from this place, you discover that real power is not in dominating life, but in cooperating with it, not in forcing outcomes, but in flowing with them, not in gripping tightly, but in opening yourself to what the universe has been trying to give you all along. 2. Decision-making is often irrational and mysterious. You may not realize it at first, but when you look honestly at your own life, you start to see that decision-making is far more irrational, mysterious, and deeply human than society teaches you to believe. Alan Watts once said that decisions arise like hiccups, and the more you pay attention, the more you see how true that is, because so many of your choices appear out of nowhere, like sudden impulses, quiet nudges, or inner shifts that you never consciously planned. And even though you try to explain those choices afterward with logic, the truth is that the information you base your decisions on is infinite, incomplete, and constantly changing, meaning you could never gather enough facts to make a perfectly calculated and fully rational choice, no matter how hard you try. This is why, whether you realize it or not, most of your decisions come from instinct rather than analysis, from intuition rather than step-by-step reasoning, and from a deeper place within you that speaks long before the conscious mind catches up. When you admit this to yourself, something in you relaxes because you finally understand why you often feel the decision before you think it. You understand why a certain job, path, or person draws you in without explanation. You understand why your mind creates reasons only after your heart has already moved. And this is where spirituality gently enters the picture, reminding you that your decisions are not random. They are expressions of a deeper intelligence that guides your spiritual development. The same intelligence that breathes for you, beats your heart, and moves your life forward even when you are not aware of it. Instead of judging yourself for not having perfect logic, you begin to trust that inner current, that quiet knowing, that subtle pull that emerges from within you like a wave forming in the ocean. From here, your relationship with choosing becomes softer and wiser. You stop forcing yourself to know everything in advance. You stop trying to control every detail out of fear. You stop pressuring yourself to choose perfectly because you finally understand that certainty is an illusion and that life always unfolds through a mixture of intuition, spontaneity, and quiet inner wisdom. And as you begin to trust this process, you step deeper into spirituality, not as a concept, but as an experience. You realize that each decision, no matter how small, is part of a larger conversation between you and the universe. And when you listen more closely, you feel supported rather than afraid. So when a decision rises within you unexpectedly, do not rush to question it or bury it beneath overthinking. Recognize that something deeper is speaking through you. Recognize that your inner guidance often knows long before your reasoning mind can explain. Recognize that your spiritual development depends not on perfect logic, but on your willingness to trust the natural intelligence already working inside you. And when you begin to live from this truth, you move with more clarity, more freedom, and more alignment with the unfolding path meant for you. If you trust the universe's mysterious way of guiding your decisions, comment below, "I follow the universe's wisdom," to affirm your alignment with this path. 3. Delegating authority mirrors universal intelligence. When you look closely at the way the universe works, you begin to see that the deepest intelligence is never concentrated in one place, but shared across many forms of life. And this truth reveals why trusting the universe is not an act of blind faith, but an alignment with a natural principle of spiritual wisdom that teachers like Alan Watts express so clearly. He often said that life becomes easier when you stop trying to control every detail and instead flow with the process of existence, because the universe itself operates through a distributed intelligence much greater than anything your individual mind can comprehend. Just as great leaders delegate authority to allow a larger system to function smoothly, the universe delegates its power through countless processes like the self-regulating balance of ecosystems, the cooperation within biological evolution, or the way millions of minds contribute to a democratic society without needing a single controlling force. The more you observe this pattern, the more you realize that you are meant to participate in life, not dominate it, because everything around you demonstrates that true order emerges from trust, openness, and connection rather than fear or rigid control. This is why your life begins to change the moment you stop overthinking and start listening to your intuition, to subtle shifts in your environment, to the lessons hidden in each experience, because these are the ways the universe communicates with you when you allow it to. Consider how your body works. Billions of cells operate independently, yet they create perfect harmony without you consciously controlling them. Consider how nature grows. Forests thrive because trees, animals, soil, and sunlight interact without hierarchy, each carrying a role within a larger intelligence. These examples show you that the universe is already guiding you through a design that does not depend on force, but on participation. Alan Watts described this beautifully when he said, "You are a function of what the whole universe is doing," reminding you that your life is not separate from the greater pattern it is woven into it. So when you feel uncertain or pressured to figure everything out, remember that the same intelligence that orchestrates the seasons, the tides, and the survival of entire species is also shaping your path. Trusting this does not mean becoming passive. It means allowing life to meet you halfway, allowing solutions to appear without forcing them, and recognizing that you are supported by a wisdom far older and wiser than your personal fears. When you surrender the illusion of total control, you make space for inspiration, clarity, and unexpected opportunities to flow toward you, because trust unlocks the natural cooperation between you and the universe. And when you choose to move with this flow instead of resisting it, you begin to experience a calm confidence that comes from knowing you are guided, held, and continually shaped by a universe that responds to openness, alignment, and inner stillness. 4. Flowing with nature brings support from unexpected places. When you step into a deeper understanding of spirituality and begin experiencing your own spiritual awakening, you start to realize that life moves with a quiet intelligence that reveals itself only when you stop fighting the current and start flowing with it. The story of the Kon-Tiki expedition captures this truth perfectly. A group of explorers set out across the vast Pacific, with nothing but a wooden raft, trusting the natural forces of wind and water to guide them. They did not rely on control, calculation, or dominance. Instead, they surrendered to the rhythm of nature, and in that surrender, they discovered that the universe meets you halfway when you are willing to cooperate with it. Their journey showed that when you align yourself with forces larger than your fears, life carries you farther than force ever could. And this mirrors the inner journey every spiritually awakening person must eventually take. Instead of pushing, gripping, or resisting, you begin to trust that the currents of life know what they are doing, because the same intelligence that moves the tides also moves the quiet unfolding of your own path. This shift invites you to live with greater openness, where you stop demanding certainty and start responding to life with presence. The more you release the illusion of control, the more clearly you notice that events begin to align in ways that feel almost orchestrated. Support appears from unexpected places. Opportunities arrive without strain, and conversations unfold at the perfect moment, as if timed by an unseen hand. When your energy shifts from fear to trust, the outer world reflects that shift back to you with synchronicities and effortless flow, revealing how closely your inner state shapes your experience of the universe. The Kon-Tiki metaphor reminds you that life becomes smoother, not because everything is easy, but because you stop resisting the natural direction your soul already knows it must follow. You begin to sense that trust is not weakness, but wisdom, because it allows you to listen, observe, and move with life more intelligently. As you continue to deepen your awareness, you understand that the universe is not something to conquer, but something to cooperate with. Flowing with life does not mean surrendering your power. It means learning to use your power in alignment with the larger pattern that is already unfolding. It means realizing that every moment carries guidance when you are quiet enough to sense it, just as sailors read the wind rather than fight it. When you live from this place, you no longer rush, force, or panic. Instead, you move with intention, clarity, and calm responsiveness. Trust becomes the bridge between where you are and where you are meant to go. And when you walk across that bridge, life reveals a subtle companionship that was always there, an unspoken assurance that you are supported, guided, and carried by something infinitely wiser than fear. Have you ever experienced this flow for yourself? If yes, share your story in the comments so others can learn from your journey. If not, comment, "I choose to flow," and let this be the moment you open yourself to the universe's guidance. 5. Learning to enjoy life is a spiritual responsibility. Learning to enjoy life is a spiritual responsibility because in a world where comfort and abundance are more available than ever, your ability to feel joy, ease, and contentment is not a luxury, but a vital part of your spirituality and spiritual development. It reminds you that your soul thrives not through endless striving, but through presence, trust, and the simple willingness to appreciate the moment you are living in right now. When you cannot relax, when you forget how to play, or when you deny yourself small moments of fulfillment, your inner world begins to dry up, pushing you toward frustration, burnout, or destructive habits. Yet when you learn to trust the universe to give you what you need at the right time, your relationship with life softens and opens, as if a heavy pressure inside you finally dissolves. joy becomes something practical and grounding rather than distant or idealistic. And trust becomes the quiet anchor that steadies your mind even when everything around you feels uncertain. You start to realize that life is not asking you to control every detail or predict every outcome, because that only drains your spirit and tightens your body. Instead, life is inviting you to participate, to breathe slowly, to listen deeply, and to allow experiences to unfold with more grace than force. Even when you look around and compare yourself to others who seem happier or more successful, you eventually understand that comparison steals your ability to appreciate the blessings already in your hands. It blinds you to the truth that your path has its own timing and its own lessons, designed specifically for your growth. Enjoying the warmth of sunlight on your skin, savoring a quiet cup of tea, or laughing freely with someone who understands you, these moments are not meaningless pauses. They are spiritual practices that bring you back to yourself and remind you that life is worth living now, not only when everything becomes perfect. This is why joy and trust are survival skills. Without them, your mind becomes restless, your heart grows guarded, and your decisions begin to come from fear instead of clarity and inner wisdom. Trusting the universe does not mean avoiding responsibility or abandoning your goals. It simply means releasing the impossible burden of trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. You still act with integrity, follow your inner guidance, and give your best. But you stop torturing yourself with anxiety about every possible outcome. You let life meet you halfway. With time, you begin to see that every challenge tests your trust, every delay strengthens your patience, and every unexpected blessing reveals that the universe works in ways you may not predict, but can always learn from. As you embrace this way of living, you understand that spiritual development is woven into your daily actions, into how you breathe through stress, how you handle disappointment, how you choose gratitude over fear, and how gently you speak to yourself on the days you feel lost. And when you finally allow joy to nourish you instead of waiting for permission to feel alive, you discover that letting go, trusting the universe, and choosing simple happiness are not only spiritual practices, they are the very path that leads you back to a peaceful, grounded, and spiritually awakened life. 6. Desirelessness arises when you realize you already have what you seek. When you start looking honestly into what you think you want, you often discover a surprising truth. The thing you've been chasing either already exists in your life or cannot be clearly defined at all. This realization gently dissolves the restless hunger that keeps you running in circles, and it leads you into a quiet state of humility where you can finally admit, I don't know. Alan Watts, a voice of deep spiritual wisdom, once said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself," reminding you that the answers you seek are not far away. They're already inside you, waiting for you to stop reaching outward long enough to notice them. As you sit with this insight, desirelessness doesn't come from rejecting life or giving up ambition. It rises because you can finally see that your desires were never really about external things. They were signals pointing you toward a deeper longing for peace, for love, for clarity, for belonging. When you recognize that no object, achievement, or person can permanently give you those inner states, something inside you begins to soften. You stop chasing the next thing that promises fulfillment, and you begin trusting that the universe already knows what you need, often better than you do. Lao Tzu captured this perfectly when he said, "To know that you do not know is the beginning of wisdom." In that space of honest not knowing, you open yourself to something far wiser than the ego's endless demands. This shift creates a spaciousness within you, a silence where the mind no longer insists that life must unfold according to your timeline or expectations. You begin to sense the natural intelligence that has always been guiding you. The same intelligence that grows the forests, moves the stars, and breathes your lungs without asking for your control. With each moment of trusting this flow, the grip of desire begins to loosen, not because you stop caring about life, but because you finally understand your place within it. You stop trying to force outcomes and start allowing experiences to arrive when they are meant to. Rumi expressed this beautifully. What you seek is seeking you. His words remind you that your deepest desires are not signs of lack, but reflections of something already alive inside you, waiting for your awareness. As desirelessness expands, you see that many of the things you once chased were only substitutes for deeper truths. You realize that fulfillment isn't something you achieve, it's something you allow. You notice that the universe has been supporting you all along, guiding you through people, lessons, and moments that shaped you into someone capable of seeing the truth hidden beneath your desires. With this awareness, you stop feeling incomplete. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling like you're running towards something you don't yet have. Instead, you settle into yourself and discover that the peace you wanted was never in the future. It has always been here, quietly waiting for you to return to it. If this message resonated with you, remember to leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss insights like this. And to anchor this truth within yourself, comment below. I already have everything I need within me. 7. Letting go unlocks divine energy. Clinging to control wastes more energy than you realize, because every time you try to force life into your preferred shape, your mind tightens, your body becomes tense, and your spirit grows tired from fighting battles that never needed to be fought. The harder you push, the more life pushes back, and this constant tension creates an invisible exhaustion that follows you everywhere, draining your clarity and blocking the natural flow of guidance meant for you. Letting go is not weakness. It is a return to alignment with how life truly works. The moment you stop gripping every outcome with fear, you free up spiritual energy that was previously trapped inside your anxiety and resistance. This surrender is not passive. It is a powerful reorientation of your inner state, a quiet decision to trust that the universe knows where you belong, even when you do not. When you give up the illusion of total control, you make space for the divine to move through your life in ways your mind could never engineer. This paradox sits at the center of spiritual awakening. The moment you stop trying to be God is the moment true power begins flowing through you. Not because you have abandoned responsibility, but because you have stopped resisting the natural current that is trying to carry you forward. When you are no longer fighting life, you become available to its wisdom. Your emotions soften, your breath deepens, and your intuition speaks more clearly because there is finally room for guidance to arise. As you surrender, subtle yet unmistakable signs begin to appear. Unexpected opportunities, intuitive nudges, coincidences that arrive with perfect timing, reminding you that life functions with a deeper intelligence when you allow it to unfold rather than force it to obey your fears. This gentle cooperation with the universe restores your energy, bringing a sense of peace that does not come from control, but from clarity and trust. Resistance exhausts you, but surrender restores you. Resistance closes doors, but surrender reveals the ones that were meant for you. Resistance is fueled by fear, but surrender is grounded in faith. And when you choose faith over fear, openness over tension, and trust over control, you step into the quiet but undeniable strength that comes from letting the divine flow through you rather than trying to manage every moment on your own. 8. Not knowing is the highest spiritual knowledge. Alan Watts teaches that not knowing is the highest spiritual knowledge. And when you hear this, you are invited into a deeper understanding of spirituality, where wisdom does not come from collecting answers, but from allowing yourself to stand humbly before the mystery of life. He draws from Christian mysticism and Eastern philosophy to remind you that the universe, the divine, or whatever name you choose for the source of existence, cannot be fully captured by your thoughts, your reasoning, or your beliefs. In this sense, not knowing is not confusion. It is a sacred form of clarity, a recognition that reality is far larger than your ability to comprehend it. This form of agnosia, or holy ignorance, opens you to truths you cannot reach through logic alone and invites you into a deeper spiritual development rooted in humility, presence, and trust. When you allow yourself to not know, something profound happens inside you. You stop forcing life to fit into your expectations, and instead, you allow life to reveal itself in its own timing. You stop demanding absolute certainty, and you begin to experience freedom from pressure, from fear, and from the belief that you must control every detail of your path. Alan Watts often said that the universe is far too vast and interconnected to be grasped intellectually, and the moment you release the need to understand everything, you create space for true wisdom to arise. Your intuition becomes clearer. Your inner world becomes softer. You begin to trust the unfolding of your experiences rather than fighting them. And in that trust, a deeper layer of spirituality begins to awaken within you. This not knowing is also an invitation to let yourself be surprised by life. When you loosen your grip on certainty, you notice synchronicities you once overlooked. You feel guidance in moments of silence. You receive insight in the spaces where your mind finally stops trying to solve everything. You begin to see that growth comes not from answers, but from openness, and that wisdom comes not from control, but from surrender. The mystics understood this deeply. They knew that the divine could not be approached through rigid belief, but only through a heart willing to be empty, curious, and receptive. Watts brings this same message to you. When you dare to step into the unknown, you step into the very space where the universe can meet you. And as you practice this surrender, your spiritual development naturally expands. You become less reactive, more grounded, and more aware of the interconnectedness of all things. You stop rushing toward conclusions and begin to appreciate the unfolding of each moment. You realize that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the birthplace of wisdom. Each time you choose not knowing over fear, openness over rigidity, and humility over certainty, you come closer to the truth of who you are and closer to the universe that has always been guiding you. To honor your journey into deeper truth, declare your willingness to embrace the mystery. Comment below, "I trust the unknown," to affirm your growth and inspire others to open themselves to life's divine unfolding. In the end, the message is simple. When you learn to trust the universe, you stop chasing what isn't meant for you and start receiving exactly what aligns with your path. As Alan Watts reminds us, life flows effortlessly when you stop resisting and allow each moment to unfold with openness and faith. If this message touched you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Your journey continues to stay connected. What happens when a sensitive soul stops pleasing everyone? The meaning of life is just to be alive. Alan Watts. Yet so many sensitive souls spend years trying to be alive for everyone but themselves. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we explore what truly happens when a deeply sensitive person finally stops people-pleasing and begins honoring their inner truth. This moment, quiet but powerful moment, can transform self-worth, relationships, and personal freedom in ways you may not expect. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Have you ever felt drained from carrying others' expectations? Comment below and share what shifted for you when you finally chose yourself. Your insight may inspire someone else who desperately needs this message today. 1. Sensitivity is a survival mechanism, not a personality trait. Sensitive souls often learn to read the world with extraordinary depth, not because they were born fragile, but because their early environments required them to develop a kind of emotional radar to survive. Sensitivity becomes a highly calibrated system, constantly scanning for danger, tension, or the slightest shift in someone's mood. And what the world calls empathy is often a survival mechanism formed long before the soul could even understand its purpose. In spiritually unsafe or unpredictable households, children learn to decode expressions, silence, tone, and energy as if their safety depends on it, because in many cases, it truly did. This ability becomes so deeply ingrained that by the time they reach adulthood, they no longer realize they are still operating from that same survival instinct, mistaking hyper-awareness for kindness and self-sacrifice for love, even though it was never meant to be their lifelong identity. As spiritual awakening begins to unfold, something subtle yet powerful rises from within. The awareness that sensitivity does not exist to fulfill others' expectations. The soul begins to understand that constantly pleasing everyone is not a virtue, but an inherited survival response, one that kept them safe in childhood, but slowly drains them in adulthood. This inner clarity exposes the truth that many sensitive souls have spent years being emotionally available to everyone while neglecting themselves, carrying others' emotions, absorbing tension like a sponge, and believing that harmony is their responsibility. Through deeper spirituality, they finally see that their gift was meant for perception, not self-abandonment. This realization creates a profound inner shift. They stop monitoring every room, stop predicting other people's reactions, and stop rescuing everyone from discomfort. They begin to understand that their intuition was meant to guide their own path, not to become a compass for everyone else's chaos. And with this new awareness, they stop apologizing for their boundaries because they recognize that boundaries are not shields of selfishness, but expressions of self-respect. These boundaries become the gentle yet firm lines that separate what they can hold from what they must release. And with each one placed, their emotional landscape becomes clearer and calmer. As they continue to awaken, sensitive souls reclaim the energy they have spent their entire lives giving away. They start hearing their own inner voice again, the one that was muted by years of prioritizing everyone else's needs. The soul becomes grounded, no longer bending under the weight of other people's expectations, and they finally understand that peace does not come from avoiding conflict, but from honoring their truth. With every moment of alignment, they grow stronger, clearer, and more sovereign. This is when their sensitivity transforms from survival to strength. It becomes a tool for discernment rather than self-erasure, a source of wisdom rather than exhaustion. In this stage of spiritual awakening, sensitivity evolves into a higher form of intuition, guiding them toward connections that nourish rather than drain them, environments that support rather than destabilize them, and relationships where they no longer need to shrink, soften, or shapeshift. They realize that their purpose was never to be emotionally accessible to everyone, but to live from a place of truth and spiritual integrity. And as they rise into this truth, their sensitivity finally becomes what it was always meant to be: evidence of resilience, depth, and spiritual wisdom, an inner compass that leads them back to themselves. Are you ready to honor your sensitivity as the powerful survival mechanism it truly is? If this message resonates with you, comment below. I honor my sensitivity to affirm your commitment to living with authenticity and inner strength. 2. Society exploits sensitive people by guilt and expectation. Society has a way of shaping sensitive people into believing that their worth depends on how much they give, how much they endure, and how easily they bend to the needs of others. And as you move through life, you might notice how the world subtly rewards you for being gentle, agreeable, and endlessly available, while punishing you the moment you try to protect your own energy. You are taught from an early age that your softness should be used in service of everyone else, that your empathy exists to soothe other people's storms, and that your heart should always be open even when it costs you your peace. This conditioning runs so quietly and so deeply that you may not even recognize it happening. Yet you feel it every time someone calls you selfish for saying no, every time guilt is placed on your shoulders for setting a boundary, and every time you are made to feel responsible for emotions that do not belong to you. And so, society keeps you in an invisible role, a caretaker silently carrying the emotional weight of everyone around you, expected to heal wounds you didn't create and solve problems you didn't cause, all while being denied the space to tend to your own. But when you stop trying to please everyone, everything begins to shift in ways you never expected, because this is the moment your spirituality deepens and your spiritual development truly begins. You start realizing how often guilt has been weaponized to keep you small, how often expectations have been placed on you simply because you were the one who felt deeply, cared freely, and gave without wanting anything in return. As you awaken to this truth, you begin to see the difference between genuine love and conditional reliance, between relationships built on mutual respect and relationships built on what you provide. And when you finally say no, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, you notice how people who once benefited from your constant giving may react with frustration, confusion, or even emotional withdrawal. Their reaction is not a sign that you have changed for the worse. It is a sign that your absence exposes the weight they once placed on you without even realizing it. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first, almost like learning how to walk again, because your whole life you have been told that self-sacrifice is noble, that silence is graceful, and that your emotional labor is something you owe to everyone. Yet as you step back and reclaim your boundaries, you begin to understand that your sensitivity was never meant to be exploited. It was meant to guide you, protect you, and help you see the world with a depth that others may never fully understand. You start noticing how much lighter your spirit feels when you no longer carry every burden, how much clearer your mind becomes when you stop absorbing the emotions of others, and how much stronger you grow when you finally honor your own needs. This is the sacred turning point where you stop living as an emotional sponge and start living as a conscious, grounded, self-respecting soul. It is here that you discover that your worth has never been tied to your ability to please others, that your voice has power, and that your peace is a priority, not a luxury. This is the moment you reclaim your energy, your truth, and your freedom. 3. Awakening begins when they finally say no. Awakening begins the moment you finally dare to say no. Because when a sensitive soul stops people-pleasing, something profound shifts inside them. The darkness they once feared turns out to be spaciousness, a quiet inner room where they can breathe, think, and feel without apologizing. And this space becomes the beginning of their true transformation. You start realizing that the fear of disappointing others was never a sign of kindness, but a burden placed on your spirit. And now, as you choose honesty over approval, you begin to unravel the old programs that taught you. Your worth was measured by how much you tolerated. What once felt like an abyss becomes a doorway into your own clarity, allowing you to see that the countless times you said yes were often small acts of self-betrayal meant to keep the peace that never truly belonged to you. As Alan Watts reminds us, you are under no obligation to be the person you were yesterday. And this truth begins to echo through your entire being as you step away from performing for others and step into living for yourself. You begin to notice how your body speaks to you each time you abandon your needs, how your chest tightens when you silence your instincts, and how your energy drains around people who only love the version of you that never says no. And instead of pushing those signals aside, you finally honor them as your soul's guidance. Saying no becomes an act of self-respect, a spiritual wisdom that frees you from the silent contracts you never agreed to, but felt obligated to uphold. You start realizing that some relationships depended not on mutual care, but on your constant giving. And when you decide to stop being the emotional caretaker or the endless peacemaker, certain people pull away. Not because you did something wrong, but because they can no longer benefit from your self-sacrifice. Their distance becomes your protection, revealing who valued your heart and who valued your compliance. The unraveling of these false identities, the good one, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never complains, can feel like losing parts of yourself. But as those layers fall away, something far more authentic emerges. You begin to understand Shakespeare's timeless truth. To thine own self be true. And you practice it not as a quote to admire, but as a way of living that demands courage. Your boundaries soften in tone, but strengthen in presence. Your no becomes calm, steady, and unapologetic. And your yes becomes real because it finally comes from choice, not fear. You no longer rush to rescue people from the consequences of their actions, nor do you carry the weight of others' emotions as if they were yours to fix. This is where the sensitive soul rises, not by hardening, but by becoming clear, grounded, and aligned with their own truth. As these shifts deepen, you stop fearing solitude because you recognize it as one of your greatest teachers. You stop chasing validation because you see how often it led you away from your own center. You stop mistaking overgiving for love because you understand that real love never asks you to abandon yourself. This is the quiet power that emerges when a sensitive soul stops pleasing everyone. You return to yourself. You protect your peace with grace, and you move through the world with a presence that is no longer shaped by guilt or fear, but by alignment and authenticity. If this truth resonates with you, let your voice be heard. Comment below. I honor my boundaries to affirm your awakening and inspire others on their journey. 4. They don't become cold. They become conscious. When a sensitive soul stops trying to please everyone, they do not become cold or hardened. They become conscious because what looks like distance from the outside is actually a deep spiritual awakening unfolding within. Instead of becoming bitter, awakened souls become discerning, realizing that compassion was never meant to be an uncontrolled reflex given to anyone who demanded it. Their kindness shifts from automatic to intentional, guided by a new clarity that honors both their emotional truth and their energetic limits. They begin to see that constantly rescuing others was not love, but self-abandonment in disguise, and that scattering their energy everywhere only attracted emotional vampires who were drawn to their light but had no intention of giving anything back. As this awareness grows, they stop pouring themselves into relationships that drain them, no longer apologizing for stepping away from chaos, toxicity, or the endless needs of those who refuse to take responsibility for their own healing. Their heart does not shut down. It simply stops leaking. Their love does not disappear. It becomes focused, precise, and anchored in wisdom. This new consciousness changes the way they listen, give, and choose, helping them understand that not every plea is genuine and not every connection is meant to be nurtured. They started to value reciprocity over flattery, authenticity over approval, and inner peace over social performance, because pleasing everyone had been costing them the very essence of who they were. They learned to observe what people consistently do rather than what they promise, and they no longer let words overshadow the truth of someone's energy. With every boundary they set, their compassion becomes more powerful because it flows from a place of self-respect instead of guilt, fear, or obligation. They realize that real kindness does not require self-sacrifice, and that saying no is sometimes the most loving choice they can make for themselves and for others. As their circle becomes smaller, it also becomes more genuine, filled with people who appreciate their presence rather than exploit it. Some may call them distant or selfish, but these accusations only come from those who benefited from their lack of boundaries. In this refined state of being, sensitive souls become more rooted, more intentional, and more connected to their true purpose. Their inner world becomes quieter, clearer, and more aligned, and they begin to see that spirituality is not about being endlessly available. It is about choosing where their energy can grow, heal, and uplift. They stop trying to prove their goodness to those who cannot see it, and instead focus on nurturing the spaces where their light is honored. Their sensitivity becomes a strength rather than a weakness, a compass rather than a burden, guiding them toward relationships that nourish rather than drain. And in this evolution, they discover a profound truth. They were not created to carry everyone. They were created to rise, to awaken, and to protect the sacred softness that makes their soul extraordinary. 5. Boundaries lead to healthier bodies and relationships. Boundaries lead to healthier bodies and relationships. And you begin to truly understand this the moment you stop carrying weight that was never yours to hold. When you spend years stretching yourself emotionally, saying yes, while your spirit quietly begs you to say no. Your body keeps the score through fatigue, anxiety, tension, and a deep heaviness that no amount of rest seems to fix. These are not random discomforts. They are the physical consequences of emotional overextension. Signals from your inner world telling you that your heart is tired of being the container for everyone else's chaos. Yet when you finally choose to step back, protect your energy, and stop absorbing other people's emotions as if they were your own, something remarkable begins to shift. Your breath deepens, your mind becomes clearer, your sleep softens, and your nervous system slowly returns to balance, reminding you that peace is not a luxury, it is your natural state. As you learn to create boundaries with honesty and self-respect, you will notice some relationships start to fall apart, especially those built on your constant giving and their constant taking. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but it is actually a form of spiritual development, a cleansing, a releasing, a recalibration of your life so that only what nourishes you remains. Draining dynamics dissolve, not because you failed, but because they cannot survive in a space where you finally honor your worth. And with every person who fades away, you make room for relationships that feel reciprocal, balanced, and emotionally safe connections where your presence is valued, not exploited. This is where your spirituality becomes practical rather than theoretical. You stop using spiritual ideals as excuses to tolerate disrespect, and instead, you use spiritual wisdom to protect your energy, honor your needs, and listen to the messages your body whispers. The tightness in your chest becomes a sign that a boundary is being crossed. The knot in your stomach becomes a signal that your yes is not aligned with your truth. The exhaustion you feel becomes evidence that you have stayed too long in spaces where your spirit was shrinking. And as you begin to trust these signals, your emotional and physical health naturally improve. You regain clarity. Your emotions become steadier. Your body feels lighter, and your inner world grows calmer. Over time, you realize that you were never meant to exist as everyone's emotional caretaker. You were meant to live with intention, with peace, and with relationships that honor your humanity, not just your usefulness. Every boundary you set becomes a declaration that your energy is sacred. Every moment you choose yourself becomes an act of healing. And every connection that remains is one that recognizes your sensitivity not as a weakness, but as a gift that deserves protection. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights that support your emotional and spiritual well-being. And if this message resonates with you, comment below. I choose boundaries that honor my health and my peace. 6. They rediscover themselves and learn to love who they are. When a sensitive soul finally stops shaping themselves around what everyone else wants and allows silence to surround them, they begin to rediscover the parts of themselves they had abandoned just to be accepted. In the quiet, they meet their true self, sometimes for the very first time, an inner being with preferences, desires, and emotions that were pushed aside for years in the name of harmony. This rediscovery is never loud or dramatic. It is soft, steady, and deeply honest. And as you walk through this process, you may feel something similar awakening within you. Alan Watts once said, "To know yourself, you must first let yourself be." And this truth becomes clearer. Each day, you step away from the pressure of pleasing others. In that stillness, you begin to realize that your identity was not lost. It was simply covered by layers of expectations. And now, as those layers fall away, you start remembering who you truly are, with time alone real, nourishing solitude free from noise, judgment, or emotional demands. You reconnect with the core of your being. You begin to hear your inner voice again, the one you silenced so others could be comfortable. That voice becomes louder, steadier, more confident, reminding you that your needs matter and your emotions deserve space. This is where spiritual wisdom begins to take root. You finally understand that choosing yourself is not abandonment of others. It is the return to your own energy. You start noticing what brings you joy, what drains your spirit, and what kind of life actually feels aligned with your heart. And as this awareness grows, you see how much of your past was built on fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing people who never truly saw your depth. But now, with every moment of truth, fear slowly dissolves. As your inner world strengthens, self-love becomes a natural practice rather than a motivational idea. You learn to appreciate the way you feel things deeply, because sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence that allows you to perceive life with more clarity than most. You begin to protect your energy, not out of defensiveness, but out of understanding. You become selective with who you allow close to you, because you finally recognize that your spirit cannot thrive in places where you are merely tolerated. And in this new chapter, you no longer apologize for being someone who cares deeply, thinks deeply, and loves deeply. Instead, you start honoring it. This is when everything changes. You choose relationships that feel mutual rather than one-sided. You create boundaries that support your well-being rather than drain it. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving chances to situations that repeatedly take more than they give. And most importantly, you stop betraying yourself just to keep the peace around you. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But once you take that step, you understand it is also the most liberating. You begin living from a place of authenticity instead of fear, and your entire reality shifts. Self-love becomes the foundation of every choice you make. Your intuition becomes your guide. Your peace becomes your priority. You no longer move through life in reaction to others. You move in alignment with the truth inside you. And this, as Alan Watts often reminded us, is the essence of spiritual wisdom. The return to who you were before the world told you who to be. 7. Anger surfaces as a sign of reclaimed worth. Underneath the quiet surface of a sensitive soul, suppressed anger often lies dormant, waiting for the moment when spiritual awakening shakes the foundations of old patterns. And when this awakening finally comes, that anger rises not as a sign of destruction, but as a sign of reclaimed worth. It is the anger of someone who has spent years being used, manipulated, overlooked, or taken for granted, and whose silence was mistaken for acceptance. This anger emerges because you suddenly see, with painful clarity, the ways you abandon yourself just to preserve peace for others. And as Alan Watts said, you do not need to be better than anyone else. You just need to be better than you used to be. Reminding you that this rising emotion is part of your evolution. At first, the intensity feels overwhelming because sensitive souls are conditioned to avoid conflict at any cost. Yet the truth is that this emotion is not here to harm you. It is here to awaken you. It tells you that a line has been crossed, that your boundaries have been violated, and that your spirit is no longer willing to be silent in the face of disrespect. Instead of suppressing it again, you begin to listen. And the more you listen, the more you realize that anger is simply a messenger carrying the truth you avoided for far too long. As you dig deeper into this emotional shift, the anger that once frightened you becomes a fierce form of clarity, illuminating every place where you dimmed yourself for others. It reveals how you allowed certain people to drain your energy, how you accepted crumbs of affection while giving your whole heart, and how you stayed loyal to situations that did not honor you. This realization marks a profound moment in your spirituality, because spiritual awakening does not always begin with peace. It often begins with truth, and truth is rarely gentle. But within this truth lies something incredibly empowering: the understanding that your anger is not an enemy. It is the boundary you never had the courage to set. It is your inner voice, rising from years of silence. And as this anger transforms from raw emotion into conscious awareness, you begin to protect your energy with a strength you never knew you had. You start saying no without guilt, walking away without fear, and valuing your peace more than the approval of others, because your soul now understands that self-abandonment is the deepest form of betrayal. With this awakening, anger evolves into a guardian that stands beside you, ensuring that you never again tolerate the things that once broke you. It fuels your desire for authenticity, helping you step into a version of yourself that is honest, grounded, and no longer dependent on external validation. It sharpens your intuition, allowing you to sense immediately when someone's intentions do not align with your well-being. And as this new clarity integrates into your daily life, you begin to move differently, more confidently, more intentionally, and more faithfully toward what nourishes your spirit. The sensitivity that once made you vulnerable becomes your strength, For it is precisely that sensitivity that allows you to feel when something is wrong and correct your course. Through this transformation, anger becomes a teacher, guiding you toward deeper self-respect and reminding you that awakening is not just a peaceful rise into the light. Sometimes it is a fiery reclaiming of power, a necessary burning away of old identities, and a courageous return to your true self. If this message resonates with you, honor your reclaimed worth today. Comment below, "I rise with self-respect," to affirm your growth and inspire others to do the same. And if this spoke to your soul, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on notifications for more content like this. 8. From people pleaser to lighthouse. From people pleaser to lighthouse is the turning point where you stop living in constant apology, stop fixing everyone's problems, and finally understand that your sensitivity was never meant to be used as a tool for survival. It was meant to be a source of clarity, depth, and strength. When you step into this shift, you stop rescuing people from their own lessons and begin supporting them with a wiser, calmer presence. You realize that rescuing often weakens both sides, while guiding from grounded awareness strengthens everyone involved. This is the moment your spirituality and spiritual development start to deepen, because you no longer confuse kindness with self-erasure. Instead, you hold space for others without abandoning yourself, and you learn to say, with quiet certainty, that your feelings matter and your boundaries are sacred. As you grow into this new way of being, you begin to embody the essence of a lighthouse, steady, rooted, and unwavering. A lighthouse does not throw itself into the ocean to save every ship. It stands tall in its rightful place, shining clearly so that those who are ready can find their way. In the same way, you stop chasing validation, stop over-explaining your worth, and stop bending your truth just to keep the peace. You no longer use your compassion as currency to earn love. You offer it freely, but without sacrificing your sanity. This is sovereign sensitivity, a heart that feels deeply, but is no longer ruled by the moods, demands, or disappointments of others. With every boundary you honor, your inner world becomes quieter, stronger, and more spacious. You stop carrying emotions that don't belong to you. Stop absorbing pain that isn't yours to fix, and stop confusing guilt with responsibility. When someone projects their frustration onto you, you stay centered because you finally understand that their reaction is not proof of your failure. When someone expects you to solve their chaos, you breathe and remember that you are responsible for your peace, not their lessons. You are not colder now. You are simply clearer. You still care, but you care from fullness rather than exhaustion. This shift changes your relationships too. Those who relied on your constant yes may resist, guilt trip you, or accuse you of becoming distant. But the truth is that you are simply reclaiming the parts of yourself you once gave away too easily. Those who are truly aligned with your soul will adjust, grow, and meet you at this higher level of honesty and respect. You become someone whose presence calms the room, not because you silence your needs, but because you honor them. You become someone who inspires others to stop people-pleasing as well, simply by showing that self-respect is not rebellion, it is alignment. And as you continue walking this path, you discover a profound truth. A sensitive soul with boundaries is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Your depth becomes wisdom instead of weight. Your empathy becomes clarity instead of confusion, and your presence becomes a guiding light rather than an invitation for others to drain you. The lessons are simple but life-changing. Your sensitivity is a gift when protected by boundaries. You are not here to fix everyone. Standing firm in your truth will naturally draw in those who value you. And the world needs more steady lighthouses, not exhausted saviors. When a sensitive soul finally stops living to please everyone, they don't become colder. They become clearer. They rediscover their own voice, reclaim their inner peace, and begin to make choices that honor their truth instead of others' expectations. This is the quiet power Alan Watts often spoke of. The moment you stop performing for the world, you return to yourself. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Your journey of inner freedom continues here with us.